The key rattled in my hand as I stood before our front door, my front door, for the first time in 8 months. Something felt off. The familiar welcome mat was gone, replaced by a generic gray one I'd never seen before. The small potted herbs I'd carefully arranged beside the door were missing too, and the brass door knocker we'd installed together had been replaced with a sleek modern doorbell. My name is Elaine, and I'd spent the better part of a year taking care of my mother, Marilyn, through her grueling cancer treatments. Vincent, my husband of 6 years, had assured me everything would be fine at home. "Focus on your mom," he'd said with his reassuring smile. "I've got everything under control here." That's what partners do. I shifted the small box of mementos from my mother's house, her favorite paintbrushes, a few watercolors she'd completed during her better days, and several plants we'd nurtured together during her recovery, and tried the key. It didn't work. The familiar lock had been changed. My nursing ID badge swung from my neck as I leaned forward, frowning, and rang the doorbell. A young woman with perfectly styled blonde hair opened the door, wearing yoga pants and an expensive-looking athletic top. Several voices murmured from inside, and I caught a glimpse of yoga mats arranged in our living room. "Can I help you?" she asked, her expression shifting from yoga instructor zen to confusion. My stomach dropped like an elevator with cut cables. "I'm sorry, I must have the wrong house," I said automatically, but I knew I didn't. This was 1542, Maple Drive, the modest suburban home Vincent and I had scrimped and saved for years to buy, the one I'd poured my heart into personalizing between my demanding hospice shifts. "Are you looking for Vincent?" she asked, tilting her head. "He's at his office right now, meeting with clients." The world tilted sideways. My nursing training kicked in, the same calm I maintained when delivering difficult news to patients' families took over. "I'm Elaine," I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. "Vincent's wife." Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "Oh," she said, glancing briefly at my scrubs and nursing badge. "I'm Patricia. Vincent's new wife." "New wife?" The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself, the small box of my mother's treasures nearly slipping from my fingers. "What do you mean, new wife? Vincent didn't tell you?" Her voice dripped with fake sympathy, but her eyes darted nervously to my credentials. "We got married last month. He said you two were separated. That you chose your career and your mother over him." My phone was in my hand before I realized I'd pulled it out. Vincent answered on the third ring. "Elaine? You're back early. How's your mother? Where's my house?" My voice came out steady, the same professional tone I used when confronting doctors about improper patient care. A long pause. "I can explain. Things have been complicated. I'm standing on our front porch talking to your new wife while she's hosting some kind of wellness session in our living room." "Explain fast." "Look, I tried calling you multiple times. I was in the hospital with my dying mother." Several birds scattered from the newly pruned tree at my outburst. The garden I'd lovingly tended as therapy after difficult shifts had been replaced with generic landscaping. I was administering her medication, holding her hand through chemo, watching her struggle to breathe. "All while you were what? Getting married?" "Your mother didn't die," he said, as if that made everything acceptable. "No thanks to you," I spat. "The money you took was supposed to help cover her treatments. Where are my things? My journals? My patient memory books?" Another pause. "In storage unit 247 at Safe Store on 5th Street. I'll text you the code." His voice had the practiced smoothness he used with clients. I ended the call without responding. Patricia still stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me like I was a particularly interesting reality show subject for her social media channel. "I'd like to see the house," I said, slipping into the calm assertiveness I used when advocating for my hospice patients. She laughed. "Excuse me? We're in the middle of a wellness session." The house I paid half the down payment for while working double shifts at the hospice center. The house that still has my name on the mortgage despite my student loans. I pulled out my phone again. "Unless you'd prefer I call my lawyer right now and explain how you're occupying a property I legally co-own?" Her smug expression faltered. "Fine, but make it quick. My followers are waiting for the next segment." Walking through my former home felt like entering an alternate reality. They'd painted over our carefully chosen colors with bland beige that would photograph well for social media. My reading nook by the window, where I'd written in my patient journals after difficult shifts, was gone, replaced by an elaborate selfie station with ring lights. The master bathroom needed work, Patricia commented as we passed it, gesturing to new fixtures. "Vincent said you never wanted to fix it up. Too focused on your job and mother." I bit back a laugh. I'd begged him for years to renovate that bathroom, saving tips from my overnight shifts in a special account. "How long have you known Vincent?" "We met at a wellness retreat about a year ago. He was looking for investment opportunities in holistic health." She adjusted her expensive yoga top. "He was so lonely, always talking about how his nurse wife was never around, too busy with other people's problems. While his wife was caring for her dying mother and working to support their household, right?" I noticed my framed nursing credentials were gone from the wall, replaced by motivational quotes in pretty frames. My phone buzzed, a text from Vincent with the storage unit code. I turned to leave, but paused in the foyer. "One more thing, Patricia. Did Vincent mention that this house has a serious black mold problem? Given your wellness background, I'm surprised he wouldn't disclose that." Her face paled beneath her perfect makeup. "What? Oh, he didn't tell you? It's in the walls. That's why we got such a good deal on it. The previous owners had to disclose it, of course. It's all in the paperwork." I smiled with the same gentle expression I used with anxious patients. "Have you been feeling tired lately? Getting headaches? With your focus on wellness, you must be concerned about environmental toxins." I walked out before she could respond, her panicked voice already calling Vincent's number behind me, the wellness session forgotten. In my car, surrounded by boxes of my mother's medications and care supplies, I finally let the tears come. 8 months of caring for my mother, of falling asleep in uncomfortable hospital chairs, of administering pain medication and documenting symptoms, of watching her fight for her life, all while Vincent was here betraying everything we'd built together. My phone rang. "Cassandra, my best friend since nursing school. You're back. How's Marilyn doing?" "She's better." I wiped my eyes, leaving a mascara streak on my scrubs. "The art therapy really helped during the last round of treatments. But I need your help, and maybe the number of a good consumer rights attorney." "What happened? Your voice sounds like it did during that terrible night shift when we lost 3 patients." I took a deep breath, feeling something harden inside me, the same resolve I felt when fighting for proper end-of-life care for my patients. "Vincent sold our house and married someone else while I was gone. He's been using our savings for some kind of investment scheme, and I'm going to make him regret everything, every single decision that led to this moment." "I'll be right over," Cassandra said without hesitation. "And Elaine, we're going to hold him accountable. What he's done isn't just wrong, it's fraudulent." I started the car, a plan already forming in my mind, as methodical and detailed as my patient care plans. They chose the wrong hospice nurse to betray, and they were about to learn exactly what that meant. Cassandra's modern condo smelled like coffee and determination. She'd already spread documents across her dining table, bank statements, property records, digital printouts of account activities, and a stack of post-it notes covered in her precise paralegal handwriting. "First things first," Cassandra said, sliding a mug toward me. "I did some digging the minute you texted from your mother's hospital room last month. Vincent's been busy while you were away, besides getting married." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, the familiar gesture I'd performed thousands of times during night shifts. "Oh, honey, that's just the tip of the iceberg." Cassandra pulled out a folder and opened her laptop. "Remember how you gave me emergency access to your accounts when you first left? Well, I've been monitoring them. 3 months ago, Vincent withdrew $50,000 from your joint savings." My coffee nearly spilled onto the digital bank statements. "He what?" "That money was earmarked for Mom's experimental treatments. It gets better, or worse, depending on how you look at it." She pushed her laptop toward me, showing a trail of digital transactions. "He used it as a down payment on a new luxury car, registered only in his name, of course. And look at this," she pointed to a series of transfers. "He's been moving money into accounts for something called Wellness Wealth Partners." I scanned the digital records, my anger building with the same intensity one felt when witnessing patient neglect. "That's nearly all our savings. I've been working double shifts, documenting every extra hour, just to cover Mom's medications." "I know." Cassandra's expression hardened as she clicked through more files. "But here's where it gets interesting. The house sale, he rushed it through while you were literally administering your mother's emergency care last month. The digital paperwork is full of irregularities." She pointed to signatures that barely resembled mine. "What do you mean?" I leaned forward, examining the screen with the same attention I gave to patient charts. "Well, for starters." Cassandra was interrupted by my phone ringing. Vincent's name flashed on the screen. "Put it on speaker," Cassandra whispered. I answered, pressing the speaker icon. "What do you want, Vincent?" "Elaine, what did you say to Patricia about black mold?" His voice was tight with anger, the smooth financial advisor tone completely gone. "Only the truth." I caught Cassandra's approving smile as she continued scanning documents on her laptop. "It's all in the disclosure documents. You did read those before selling our house, right? As a financial advisor, I'd expect you to be thorough with such an important investment. There is no black mold. You're making things up to cause problems." Patricia is freaking out, talking about canceling her wellness livestream series. Am I making things up? Check the inspection report from when we bought the place, page 47, I believe. The previous owners had it treated, but you know how these things can come back if not maintained properly. I'm surprised you didn't mention it, given Patricia's focus on health and wellness. Silence on the other end. "While I have you," I continued, using the calm, firm voice I reserved for difficult family consultations at the hospice center, "want to explain why you withdrew $50,000 from our joint savings? That was my money too, earned from night shifts and holiday rotations, that you used for your new car and this Wellness Wealth Partners venture. All while I was draining my personal savings and maxing out my credit cards for Mom's experimental treatments." More silence. I could hear him breathing, probably calculating his next move like he did with investment portfolios. "By the way," I added, "I just got off the phone with the bank. Interesting how you forged my signature on some of those withdrawal slips. Did you use the signature from my nursing license that used to hang in our hallway?" "You can't prove that," he said quickly, too quickly. "And anyway, we've always treated our finances as shared. That's what married couples do." "Can't I?" We'll see what the bank's fraud department has to say. I document everything, Vincent. It's what they trained us to do in nursing school. I hung up before he could respond, the same decisive action I took when ending difficult conversations with uncooperative doctors. Cassandra slow clapped, her paralegal experience evident in her appreciation of the strategy. The black mold thing was brilliant. Was there really an inspection report? Of course. I took a sip of my coffee, feeling the caffeine hit my system like it did during long shifts. Page 47 talks about a minor moisture issue in the basement that was fixed before we moved in, but they don't know that. I documented everything when we bought the house. Habit from work. You're beautifully strategic, Cassandra grinned, turning her laptop to show me another screen. Now, about the house sale. My colleague at the Consumer Protection Office looked into the digital records. Guess what? Vincent never filed the proper paperwork for selling a jointly owned property without both owners present. Look at these electronic timestamps. I leaned forward, scanning the screen with the same focus I gave to complex medication schedules. What does that mean legally? It means the sale might not be binding. You could potentially challenge it, especially with evidence that he was systematically moving your money without consent. There's a pattern of financial abuse here. A knock at the door made us both jump. Cassandra checked the peephole, then quickly opened it. Perfect timing. Come in, Naomi. A tall woman in her early 50s entered, carrying a leather briefcase and a tablet. Sorry I'm late, had to finish a consumer fraud case downtown. She extended her hand to me. I'm Naomi, Cassandra's colleague from the consumer rights firm, and from what she's told me, you need serious legal intervention. Can you help me get my house back? I asked, straightening my shoulders, still in my slightly rumpled scrubs from the hospital. Naomi sat down, pulling out her tablet and bringing up several documents. Better. I can help you make sure Vincent and his new wife never feel secure in their ill-gotten gains. And we may be able to protect others from his schemes too. She swiped through several screens. First, we're filing an emergency injunction on the sale. Then, we're reporting those forged bank documents and investigating this wellness wealth partners that he's funneling money into. I don't want to just annoy them, I said, thinking of my hospice patients who taught me the value of meaningful action. I want them to understand the harm they've caused. The betrayal. Naomi looked up, her eyes sharp with the same intensity I'd seen in the best patient advocates. Trust me, they will. Cassandra mentioned Vincent's mother, Loretta. She's a retired school principal, right? With significant community standing? I nodded. She doesn't know what he did. He told her you abandoned him for your career. Not for long. Naomi smiled grimly. I've got a strategy, but you'll need to be patient, the same patience you use with your terminal patients. We're going to unravel their deceptions methodically, thoroughly, and they won't know what hit them until it's too late. Speaking of methodical, Cassandra added, reaching into a folder, look what I found when I ran a background check on this Wellness Wealth Partners venture. She handed me a printout of a regulatory warning. As I read it, my eyes widened. Is this real? I whispered, recognizing the hallmarks of a potential investment scam, similar to what a patient's family had fallen victim to last year. Cassandra nodded. Very. And guess who never disclosed to Patricia's parents that the wellness investment opportunity they put their retirement into isn't registered properly with the Securities Commission? I looked at the document again, a slow smile spreading across my face, not the gentle one I gave to patients, but one of grim determination. Vincent and Patricia's perfect little influencer world was about to come crashing down, one revelation at a time. Ladies, Naomi said, raising her coffee mug like we were toasting at a hospital staff gathering after a successful intervention. "Let's build this case." "Remember," Naomi said, adjusting my collar on the blouse I'd changed into, "you're not angry, you're concerned. Use your hospice voice." We stood outside my former home, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured lawn that used to be my wild therapeutic garden where I'd decompress after difficult shifts. "Concerned," I repeated, smoothing my face into the neutral expression I used when delivering difficult news to patients' families, "and I'm just being neighborly by sharing some important information about their new home. The same way I'd want someone to tell a patient about medication interactions." Cassandra squeezed my hand before heading back to her car, where she'd wait and watch, her phone ready to document anything we might need later. I rang the doorbell. Patricia answered, her face falling when she saw me. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the stress lines forming around her eyes. "What do you want?" "I had to cancel my wellness workshop because of what you said." "I've been doing some thinking," I said, channeling my best end-of-life counselor voice. "It wasn't fair of me to drop that information about the mold and leave so abruptly." "May I come in? I have some documents you should see." As someone committed to wellness, I thought you'd want to know about potential health impacts. She hesitated, then stepped aside, her expensive yoga outfit replaced with casual loungewear that still probably cost more than my weekly salary. Vincent sat at the kitchen island, his jaw tightening when he saw me. The financial advisor mask slipped back into place. "What's this about, Elaine?" I placed a folder on the counter, arranging it neatly the way I'd organized medical information for anxious families. "I couldn't sleep last night, thinking about how I'd feel if I were in your shoes. Buying a house is such a huge investment, and there are so many things that can go wrong if you don't know the property's history. As a financial advisor, Vincent, I'm sure you understand the importance of full disclosure." Patricia moved closer despite Vincent's warning look, her wellness influencer curiosity overriding her caution. "For instance," I continued, opening the folder with the careful movements I used when handling sensitive medical documents, "did Vincent tell you about the property line dispute that could affect your home yoga studio plans?" "What property line dispute?" Patricia asked, her influencer-perfect posture suddenly tense. Vincent stood up, adjusting his expensive watch. "There is no dispute, actually. Elaine is just trying to cause problems." I pulled out a survey document, pointing to the markings with the same precision I used when explaining treatment plans. "The previous owner never resolved their issue with the neighbors. See this line here? The garage that you've been talking about converting to a wellness studio actually sits 3 feet over the property line. The neighbors, Mrs. Thornhill specifically, were kind enough to let us keep it there when I brought her homemade soup after her surgery, but she never signed the official easement. And she mentioned to me that she's not thrilled about increased traffic for wellness workshops." Patricia's face paled beneath her perfect complexion. "What does that mean for my wellness studio plans? I've already hired a photographer for the space." "It means," I said gently, using the same compassionate tone I used when explaining difficult prognosis, "they could legally force you to tear down that space or significantly reduce its size." "But I'm sure Vincent knew that when he sold you the house, right, Vincent?" As a financial advisor, due diligence would be second nature. He wouldn't meet my eyes, his fingers tapping nervously on his expensive watch. "And then there's the matter of the basement." I pulled out another document with the same careful handling I used for patient charts. "There was significant water damage a few years back. It caused structural issues. We had it repaired, of course, but it needs regular monitoring." Vincent completely remodeled it himself, showing off his DIY skills. I looked directly at him. "You've been checking those support beams monthly, right?" especially after those renovations you did without permits? No one said anything about support beams or permits, Patricia said, her wellness guru composure cracking, voice rising with genuine alarm. Vincent? It's not a big deal, he muttered, straightening his designer tie. Just routine homeowner stuff. Not a big deal? I widened my eyes with the practiced concern I showed to patients' families. Vincent, you remember what the structural engineer said. Those DIY renovations you did to impress your investment clients, if those beams aren't properly reinforced and regularly inspected, the whole foundation could compromise, especially with all the vibration from yoga classes. Enough. Vincent slammed his hand on the counter, his financial advisor facade crumbling. What do you want, Elaine? Money? Is that it? I blinked with the innocence I often used when advocating for difficult patients. Want? I'm just being informative. The same professional courtesy I'd extend to any patient's family. Oh. That reminds me. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through it methodically. I reached out to Mrs. Thornhill next door, since I helped her through her husband's hospice care last year. She's already speaking with the neighborhood association about the property line and zoning for commercial wellness activities. They're quite interested in discussing noise ordinances and parking regulations for your planned wellness retreats. Patricia grabbed the survey document, studying it with growing horror, her influencer poise completely gone. We can't afford to rebuild that space, Vincent. All my promotional materials show it. We're already stretched thin with the car payments and my new brand launch. The car? I gasped with practiced surprise, the same expression I used when patients revealed they'd been hiding symptoms. Oh. You kept that even after the dealership called about the safety recall? Vincent's face went from red to white, his financial advisor confidence evaporating. What dealership? The one that left me a voicemail last week, thinking I was still the co-owner since the registration documents weren't properly updated. Something about a critical safety issue with the braking system. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. I adopted my delivering serious news tone. Those extensive repairs are just part of luxury car ownership, though they did mention it's dangerous to drive until fixed. Patricia whirled on Vincent, her wellness guru serenity completely shattered. You said that car was an investment in our brand image. That it was in perfect condition. It was. It is. He turned to me, desperation in his eyes. You're making this all up. Trying to ruin what we've built. Am I? I pulled out my phone again with the steady hand I'd developed administering precise medications, pressed play, and a mechanic's voice filled the kitchen, detailing technical problems in automotive jargon. I think, I said into the shocked silence, using my end-of-shift handover voice, you two have a lot to discuss about your wellness and financial future. Oh, and one more thing. I placed a final document on the counter with the precision of placing a medical chart. You might want to look into the environmental history of this property before your next wellness retreat. Particularly interesting findings from the geological survey. I'd hate for your clients to be exposed to anything unwholesome. I walked to the door, pausing with my hand on the knob, my posture perfect from years of nursing rounds. Welcome to the neighborhood. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of each other. Perhaps at Mrs. Thornhill's next community meeting about commercial zoning violations? Outside, Cassandra was trying not to laugh as I slid into her car. That was masterful. Did you see their faces? Pure hospice nurse skill, delivering devastating news while maintaining complete composure. The best part. I held up my phone with the clinical pride of showing a successful treatment result. That mechanic's message? It's about my old car from before nursing school, but they don't know that. And the document about environmental findings? Standard geological survey with nothing remarkable, but they'll be second-guessing every health symptom they experience in that house. Cassandra started the car. Naomi called while you were in there. The bank's fraud investigation team wants to meet tomorrow about those forged signatures and the unauthorized account access. I nodded, watching Vincent and Patricia's silhouettes arguing through the kitchen window, thinking of the patients I'd seen whose relationships crumbled under pressure. Perfect. You know what hurts the most? I would have given him the divorce if he'd just asked. We could have discussed it like adults. He didn't have to steal the money I earned through night shifts and holiday rotations, sell my house, and destroy my credit while I was administering my mother's pain medication. Their karma's coming, Cassandra said, pulling away from the curb, and it's wearing sensible shoes and carrying a very organized case file full of meticulously documented evidence. I smiled, thinking of the real documents waiting in Naomi's office. Tomorrow would bring a whole new set of revelations, and I was approaching it with the same methodical care I gave to my most complex hospice cases. The bank's conference room felt colder than necessary, reminding me of hospital administrative meetings. Vincent sat across from me, his lawyer beside him, while Naomi arranged documents with the precision I used when setting up medication schedules. Patricia hadn't come, probably still busy researching property laws and wellness space requirements. Let's begin, the bank investigator said, adjusting her glasses. Mr. Reed, we have several withdrawal slips and online transfer authorizations here with Mrs. Reed's signature. She claims these are forgeries and that the online access was unauthorized. That's ridiculous. Vincent's lawyer interjected. My client had full access to the joint account as her husband and financial advisor. Access, yes, Naomi said smoothly. Permission to forge signatures and override security protocols? No. Notice the distinctive formation in the E of these authentic signatures. She laid out documents I'd actually signed, including nursing certifications. Now, compare them to these withdrawal slips and digital authorizations. The investigator leaned forward, frowning at the evidence. The differences are quite apparent, and our cybersecurity team has flagged unusual access patterns. I was handling our finances while my wife abandoned our marriage for her career. Vincent snapped, his polished advisor demeanor cracking. I kept my voice level, using the same calm tone I used when correcting inaccurate medical orders. I was caring for my mother during aggressive cancer treatment, which you knew, since you used our savings meant for her medical bills to fund your investment scheme and buy yourself a luxury car. I was working double shifts at the hospice center to make up the difference. A vehicle, his lawyer cut in, that was purchased during the marriage and should be considered joint marital property. Interesting point, Naomi said, pulling out another document with clinical efficiency. Speaking of joint property, let's discuss the house sale. My client never signed these transfer documents either, digital or physical. Vincent's face twitched, his confident financial advisor mask slipping. She was unreachable. I tried calling. I was in St. Mary's Medical Center, I interrupted with the clarity I used during medical emergencies, room 415, administering my mother's breakthrough pain medication. You knew exactly where to find me, you even texted me there about the water bill. Instead, you forged my signature again and accessed my accounts without authorization. The investigator made a note. Mr. Reed, forgery and unauthorized financial access of this magnitude are serious offenses. We're particularly concerned about the pattern of account manipulations coinciding exactly with Mrs. Reed's documented hospital stays with her mother. You can't prove. Actually, Naomi interrupted, we can. We've obtained the security footage from the bank and the digital access logs. Would you like to see yourself making these withdrawals and the IP address records? The teller remembers you quite clearly, especially when you claimed your wife was too busy with optional overtime to come in person, when bank records show she was actually administering emergency care to her mother at that exact time. Vincent's lawyer whispered something urgently in his ear. His face had gone ashen, the same color I'd seen on patients when they received unexpected news. My phone buzzed, a text from Cassandra. Mrs. Thornhill is at your old house right now with the zoning commissioner, measuring the garage encroachment. Patricia looks like she might need medical attention. I smiled slightly, then refocused on the meeting with the professional attention I gave to patient cases. Given the severity of these findings, the investigator said, the bank will be freezing all joint accounts pending further investigation. Mr. Reed, you may also face criminal charges for financial fraud, identity theft, and potentially wire fraud if these online transactions crossed state lines. Criminal charges? Vincent stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly. Over a few signatures and some account access? This is ridiculous. Elaine, tell them. Tell them. Tell them what? I met his eyes with the same direct gaze I used with difficult families in hospice care. That you didn't steal from me while I was changing my mother's for? That you didn't sell our house out from under me? That you didn't get married to a wellness influencer while I was sitting next to my mother's hospital bed administering medication? I turned to the investigator. I'd like to press charges, and I've documented everything meticulously, as I've been trained to do. Vincent's lawyer grabbed his arm before he could respond. They whispered furiously for a moment before Vincent slumped back into his chair, defeated. My client, his lawyer said carefully, would like to discuss a settlement arrangement. I'm sure he would. Naomi gathered her papers with clinical efficiency. Unfortunately, that's not on the table today. The bank will be in touch about their criminal investigation. As for the house, she smiled thinly. The property court hearing is next week. I hope you've enjoyed living there, because you won't be listing it as a wellness retreat venue for much longer. My phone buzzed again. Cassandra had sent a photo of Patricia arguing with Mrs. Thornhill in the driveway, property documents and zoning regulations clutched in her hands, her wellness guru image completely abandoned. One more thing, I said, standing with the calm dignity I maintained at the end of difficult family meetings. Vincent, you might want to check your email. The Consumer Protection Board just sent over some interesting information about that Wellness Wealth Partners investment you've been promoting to Patricia's followers. We left Vincent with his head in his hands, his lawyer already on the phone, probably trying to find a criminal defense attorney who specialized in investment fraud. In the parking lot, Naomi turned to me. That went better than expected. The bank investigator was practically salivating over those forged documents and unauthorized access logs. What happens now? Now, she checked her watch with the precision of someone accustomed to tracking medication schedules. We wait for the property court hearing. But first, she nodded toward the street where Cassandra was pulling up in her practical sedan. I believe you have a dinner appointment with Vincent's mother. I smiled. Loretta had always loved me, always trusted me, had even supported my decision to become a hospice nurse after my father's death. Finding out what her precious son had really been up to these past 8 months would be difficult but necessary, like many of the family conversations I facilitated at work. Don't worry, Cassandra called through her open window. I already arranged everything at Loretta's house. She insisted on cooking dinner herself, and I have digital copies of everything, the forged documents, the bank statements, even pictures of Vincent and Patricia from when you were administering your mother's emergency medication. I slid into the passenger seat, feeling lighter than I had in weeks, the way I felt after helping a patient find peace. You know what the most important part is? He did this all to himself. Every single consequence is the direct result of his own choices. Just like I tell patients' families, we can only control our own actions. Karma's not punitive, Cassandra said, pulling away from the bank with the careful driving she developed from years of transporting sensitive legal documents. She's just the universe's record keeper, making sure everyone's actions are properly documented, and Vincent's file is overflowing with evidence. Loretta's face crumpled as she looked at the last photo on Cassandra's tablet, Vincent kissing Patricia outside an expensive jewelry store while the timestamp showed I was administering my mother's breakthrough pain medication during a particularly difficult night. I don't understand, she whispered, pushing her untouched homemade lasagna away. He told me you'd abandoned him for your career, that you'd stopped answering his calls because you were too busy with your patients and mother. Would you like to see my call logs and hospital sign-in sheets? I pulled out another document with the organization I used for patient records. Every call he made to me lasted less than 30 seconds, usually while I was in critical care meetings or administering Mom's medication. I returned every call when I could. I sighed, feeling the familiar weight of a difficult family conference. But about the house. Loretta's hands shook as she picked up her water glass, reminding me of my anxious patience. He said you agreed to sell it because you were moving in with your mother permanently. I never signed anything, digitally or physically. He forged my signature, just like he did with the bank withdrawals and loan applications. I slid the bank investigator's preliminary report across the table with the deliberate movements I used when sharing tough news. He took the money we'd saved for Mom's experimental treatment, the one not covered by insurance, and bought himself a luxury car and invested in this questionable wellness scheme. Tears welled in Loretta's eyes, the kind I'd seen in countless family members receiving difficult news. I retired from 30 years of teaching children to have strong values. I thought I raised him better than this. A timer went off in the kitchen, but Loretta didn't move to check it. There's more, I said gently, using my hospice voice. He and Patricia, they're not just living in our house, they're trying to convert it into a commercial wellness retreat center. But they just moved in. And that's a residential neighborhood. Because they know it's not legally theirs. They're trying to generate income from it before the property court hearing next week. I paused, giving her time to process, just as I did with families receiving difficult diagnoses. Did Vincent ever tell you where he got the money for Patricia's engagement ring and their wellness business startup? Loretta's face went pale beneath her practical makeup. He said he'd been saving from his financial advising business. He sold the art collection your late husband left for your grandchildren's education fund. The collection you entrusted to him for safekeeping. Her hand flew to her mouth, a gesture I'd seen countless times in my hospice work. No. Those pieces were meant for the future, for education. I found the gallery receipts and transfer documents. He sold everything except that small watercolor of the lake house, which Patricia has hung in their bedroom as wellness decor. That painting was done by my mother before her diagnosis, as a gift for your 70th birthday. Loretta's voice hardened, the former school principal emerging through her pain. She painted that during our weekend art retreat. I know exactly what it means, and now it's being treated as a decorative accent by the woman who helped my son betray his wife while she was providing hospice care to her mother. Loretta stood up abruptly, with the determination I'd seen in family members taking action. Take me to them now. I need to see this for myself. 20 minutes later, we pulled up to my old house. Patricia's new luxury SUV sat in the driveway next to Vincent's car, both vehicles sporting vanity plates about wellness and prosperity. Loretta was out of the car before I fully stopped, moving with the purposeful stride that had intimidated generations of schoolchildren. She rang the doorbell repeatedly until Patricia answered, wearing casual designer loungewear and the small framed watercolor landscape mounted as a decorative piece on a chain around her neck. Loretta. We weren't expecting a visit. I was just filming a meditation segment for my followers. Take it off. Loretta's voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded school assemblies for decades. What? Patricia's influencer smile faltered. The painting. Remove it from that ridiculous necklace setting right now. Vincent appeared behind Patricia, looking alarmed. Mom, what are you doing here? Is everything okay? Getting back what doesn't belong to you. Loretta pushed past them into the house with the confidence of someone who had broken up countless playground disputes. Where's the rest of it? Your father's art collection? What haven't you sold to fund this wellness scheme of yours? Vincent shot me a venomous look. You had no right to involve my mother in this. No right? Loretta whirled on him with the precision of someone who had caught students in lies for decades. Like you had no right to sell your father's carefully curated art collection? Like you had no right to forge your wife's signature while she was working extra shifts? Like you had no right to sell this house while Elaine was helping her mother fight for her life and administering palliative care? Mom, I can explain our investment strategy. Explain what? How you lied to me for months. How you made me believe Elaine had abandoned you for her career when you were the one betraying her. How you used my name and reputation to lend credibility to your schemes. Patricia tried to slip away toward her recording setup, but Loretta's voice stopped her with the authority that had halted countless hall runners. Don't you dare leave wearing that painting as a fashion accessory. With trembling fingers, Patricia removed the small framed watercolor and placed it in Loretta's outstretched hand. I want everything else back too, Loretta said, examining the painting for damage with a teacher's keen eye. Every piece you haven't sold. And Vincent, her voice broke slightly, revealing the mother beneath the principal, don't come to Sunday dinner anymore. I can't look at you right now. She turned to leave, then paused at the door, turning back with perfect dramatic timing. Oh, and that letter of recommendation you wanted for the Financial Planning Association? I'll be writing to them too, but not the recommendation you were hoping for. I'll be recommending they investigate your practices thoroughly. Outside, Loretta sagged against my car, clutching the small painting with the vulnerability I often saw in family members after difficult confrontations. I'm so sorry, Elaine. I should have known better, should have asked more questions when he started making excuses about your absences. It's not your fault, I said, using the same reassuring tone I used with patients' families. Vincent fooled a lot of people. He's very good at presenting the image people want to see. Not anymore. She straightened up, wiping her eyes with the composure of someone who never cried in front of students. What else can I do to help make this right? I smiled gently. Actually, the property court hearing is next week. Would you be willing to testify about what Vincent told you regarding the house sale and his business practices? Testify? I'll bring every email, every text message where he lied about you and your mother's condition. She gripped my hand with the strength that had guided countless students. Thank you for showing me the truth, no matter how much it hurt. As I always told my students, truth is sometimes painful but always necessary. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of Vincent and Patricia arguing in the doorway. My phone buzzed, a message from Naomi, just heard from the Securities Commission. They're opening an investigation into Wellness Wealth Partners tomorrow. Also got confirmation from the Consumer Protection Board about those fake wellness supplements he's been marketing. I showed the message to Loretta, who nodded grimly. Good. My son needs to learn that actions have consequences. That was always the first rule in my classroom. Speaking of consequences, I said, thinking of how I prepared families for coming changes. Wait until they realize what's in that information packet I left on their kitchen counter about supplement regulations and investment fraud penalties. What's actually in it? Standard consumer protection pamphlets that are freely available online, but they'll spend hours trying to figure out what new disaster is coming their way. For the first time that day, Loretta smiled with genuine warmth. You're rather brilliant at this psychological chess, aren't you? I learned from the best, I said, thinking of my mother's favorite saying that she'd repeat during her art classes. Patience and persistence reveal all truths eventually, in nursing, in art, and in life. The property court hearing was scheduled for tomorrow, but fate had other plans. My phone rang at 3 a.m., vibrating against my nursing textbooks. It was Mrs. Thornhill, my former neighbor. Elaine, you need to come to the house right now. There's water everywhere and the fire department is here. I arrived still wearing my scrubs from a late hospice shift, to find 3 fire trucks, their emergency lights painting the pre-dawn street in surreal reds and blues, eerily similar to the medical emergency lights I witnessed daily. A small crowd of neighbors stood watching as firefighters pumped water out of my former basement. Patricia sat on the curb, her perfect hair soaked in makeup streaming down her face, wearing silk pajamas completely inappropriate for the emergency. Vincent was arguing with a firefighter, gesturing wildly with the same animated hands he used when pitching investments. What happened? I asked Mrs. Thornhill, my assessment instincts kicking in immediately. Remember that foundation issue you mentioned? Well, one of those support beams, the ones Vincent renovated without permits, gave way completely, broke the main water line. The whole basement's flooded. All those wellness products they were storing down there are floating everywhere. Cassandra appeared beside me, still in her practical nightwear but somehow looking as prepared as she did for court. I called Naomi. She's on her way with the property documentation. Vincent spotted me and stormed over, his financial advisor charm completely abandoned. You knew about this structural problem. I tried to warn you about checking those support beams and getting proper permits for your renovations. I kept my voice level, using the same calm tone I used with agitated family members at the hospice center. Did you even look at the maintenance and inspection documentation I left? There was no maintenance documentation in that folder. Patricia shouted from the curb, her wellness guru serenity completely shattered. Just standard consumer pamphlets. Nothing about support beams. What? I frowned with genuine confusion, the same expression I used when patients reported unexpected symptoms. The inspection reports and maintenance history were in the manila envelope on the kitchen counter, labeled Home Structural Reports. Vincent's face went white beneath his perfect tan. That envelope? We threw it away. We thought it was just more of your passive-aggressive warnings about the property line. You threw away the structural inspection reports? The firefighter who'd been arguing with Vincent joined our conversation, his expression incredulous. Ma'am, those documents could have prevented this completely. The beam showed clear signs of stress from improper renovation. It's textbook DIY disaster, should have been addressed by a professional immediately. Patricia started crying harder, her waterproof mascara finally meeting its match. We can't afford professional repairs. The wellness studio renovation already maxed out our credit cards. We just paid for the garage property line survey and consultation with a zoning attorney. About that garage situation, Mrs. Thornhill chimed in with the timing of someone who'd spent decades in real estate. My attorney says you have until Friday to begin demolition of the encroaching structure or face daily fines. Demolition? A new voice joined the chaos. We turned to see Loretta walking up the driveway with the purposeful stride of a retired school principal, taking in the scene with trained assessment. "What have you done to this house, Vincent?" "Mom, what are you doing here at this hour?" Mrs. Thornhill called me. "I'm still on the neighborhood education committee, remember? We were concerned about your plans to run commercial wellness retreats in a residential zone." A firefighter emerged from the house holding something that made Loretta gasp. "Found this floating in the basement storage area. Anyone claim it?" It was an art portfolio case, waterlogged but partially intact. Loretta snatched it before Vincent could move. Inside, wrapped in now-soaked protective paper, lay several of her late husband's paintings and sketches. "You told me you'd placed these in climate-controlled art storage," she whispered, her voice carrying the disappointment of a teacher who's caught a favorite student cheating. "More lies, Vincent. These are ruined now." "I was going to sell them properly," he muttered, straightening his soaked designer pajamas. "We needed the money for the wellness center startup." "For what?" I interrupted with the directness I used when confronting family members who weren't following care plans. "The luxury car payments? The social media promotional campaigns? You can't afford to fix the garage you have to tear down? Or maybe the basement that's now turned into an indoor swimming pool for wellness treatments?" Naomi's car pulled up, and she stepped out looking impeccably dressed despite the hour, carrying her tablet and documentation folder. "Well, this structural failure significantly alters our approach for tomorrow's hearing. The hearing's the least of our problems." Patricia stood up, wobbling slightly in her impractical silk slippers. "We can't live here. My followers have already seen the house and my content. Where are we supposed to run the wellness business now?" "You could stay with your parents," Vincent suggested without thinking. "My parents? The ones who invested their retirement in your wellness wealth partners after you told them Elaine approved of the business model? They won't even take my calls now that they've been contacted by the Securities Commission." I watched their carefully curated world crumbling as rapidly as the house's compromised foundation. Cassandra touched my arm gently. "Should we tell them about the homeowner's insurance situation?" "What about the insurance?" Vincent demanded, his financial advisor instincts finally kicking in. "Oh," I said with the innocent tone I used when asking patients if they'd been following their medication schedules, "just that you needed to update the comprehensive policy within 30 days of taking ownership, especially if you were planning commercial activities on the property. You did handle that basic financial responsibility, right?" The look of horror on their faces answered that question as clearly as any medical chart. "The good news," Naomi said, checking her tablet with clinical efficiency, "is that this catastrophic structural failure makes tomorrow's hearing much more straightforward. No judge will contest the sale's illegality now, given the undisclosed DIY renovations, structural issues, improper zoning use, and forged documents." "But we put everything we had into this house," Patricia whispered, her influencer persona completely shattered. "All our content was going to be filmed here." "Everything you had?" I stepped closer, my voice carrying the same intensity one used when advocating for patient dignity. "I put 6 years of love and work into this house between hospice shifts. I planted every medicinal herb in that garden while studying for my certification exams. I selected every paint color to create a healing environment. I built a sanctuary where I could process the emotional weight of my work. And you took it all while I was administering pain medication to my critically ill mother, who didn't even die." Vincent shouted in frustration. The crowd of neighbors gasped at his callousness. Loretta closed her eyes in visible pain. "No," I said quietly, using my end-of-life counselor voice. "She didn't die. She fought harder than anyone I've ever known. And while she was fighting, showing incredible courage, you were destroying everything we built together and exploiting my profession for your wellness scams. A city building inspector arrived, immediately placing condemned notices on the front door after a brief assessment. You have 1 hour to remove essential personal items, he announced with the finality of a terminal diagnosis. The structure isn't safe for occupancy. As Vincent and Patricia stumbled inside to gather their belongings, Cassandra handed me a coffee she'd somehow acquired despite the early hour. Feeling vindicated now? I watched water continuing to pour from my former home's basement windows, the early morning sun beginning to rise behind it like it did after so many night shifts. Not vindicated, but at peace. Sometimes the truth reveals itself in its own time. I see it with my patients every day. Speaking of revelations, Naomi said, checking her phone, wait until they discover the Securities Commission investigation I helped initiate into their unregistered Wellness Wealth Partners operation. The sound of Vincent's anguished yell from inside the house suggested he'd just found the official financial regulatory investigation notice I had placed in his home office yesterday. Justice might move slowly, but it was as thorough as a well-documented patient chart. The property court hearing felt almost anticlimactic after the morning's flood drama. Vincent and Patricia sat on one side, still looking shell-shocked in hastily assembled outfits, while their lawyer shuffled through water-stained papers with growing frustration. Your Honor, Naomi began with professional confidence. Given the catastrophic events of this morning, the courtroom door burst open with the same dramatic timing as a family arrival in a hospice room. A woman in a crisp business suit strode in with purposeful steps, followed by 2 others carrying digital tablets and document cases. Your Honor, I'm Victoria Ramirez from the Securities and Exchange Commission's Enforcement Division. We'd like to add some pertinent information to today's proceedings about Mr. Reed's financial activities. Vincent's face went from pale to ashen gray. Patricia grabbed his arm, her wellness guru composure completely shattered as she whispered frantically. Proceed, the judge said, looking genuinely interested for the first time that morning. We've uncovered evidence of significant securities fraud spanning the last 3 years, Ramirez announced with clinical precision. Mr. Reed has been operating several undeclared investment vehicles under the Wellness Wealth Partners name and failing to register securities as required by law. That's not relevant to this property dispute. Vincent's lawyer protested, shuffling through his water-damaged papers. Actually, Ramirez continued, pulling up documentation on her tablet, it is directly relevant. The funds used for the down payment on this house, they came from one of these unregistered investment pools. Furthermore, we have evidence that Mr. Reed has been using the property as an unregistered business headquarters for soliciting investments from wellness enthusiasts. Patricia stood up suddenly, her designer outfit wrinkled from the morning's chaos. Business headquarters? What are you talking about? This is our home. Mrs. Reed, Ramirez clarified, nodding respectfully to me as the legal Mrs. Reed, are you aware that your husband has been running an unregistered investment scheme targeting wellness practitioners and their clients from the home office? That he's been promising unrealistic returns on revolutionary wellness products that don't exist? Investment scheme? Patricia's voice rose to a pitch I usually associated with family members receiving unexpected terminal diagnoses. Vincent, you told me those investor meetings were for legitimate wellness business partnerships. You said we were helping people achieve wellness and financial freedom. Sit down, Patricia, Vincent hissed through clenched teeth, but Patricia was beyond his control, her carefully constructed persona completely shattered. Is this why you insisted we buy that specific house with the home office? Is this why you rushed the sale and refused to let me review the documents? She turned to the judge, her voice breaking. Your Honor, I had no idea about any of this. He told me everything was properly registered and legal. I've been promoting these investments to my followers. Mrs. Reed, the judge said firmly, please be seated. You'll have an opportunity to make your statement. Loretta, sitting behind me with the perfect posture of a career educator, made a small sound of distress. I reached back and squeezed her hand with the same reassuring pressure I used with anxious family members. Given these developments, Naomi said with professional smoothness, and the catastrophic structural damage revealed this morning, we move to have the sale immediately invalidated and the property returned to my client. Objection. Vincent's lawyer stood, though with noticeably less confidence. My client, your client, Ramirez interrupted with authoritative precision, is about to be taken into custody for securities fraud, wire fraud, and operating an unregistered investment scheme targeting vulnerable wellness enthusiasts. I suggest you focus on his criminal defense rather than this property dispute. 2 federal agents entered the courtroom with the quiet efficiency I'd seen in hospice transfers. Vincent looked wildly around like a cornered animal, his financial advisor facade completely crumbled. This is all your fault, he shouted at me. You vindictive nurse. You couldn't stand that I found happiness while you were playing martyr. Mr. Reed, the judge's voice cracked like a whip, control yourself immediately or I'll have you removed and held in contempt. Patricia's voice shook with genuine emotion, perhaps for the first time since I'd met her. What about my parents' wellness investment fund? What did you do with their retirement money? The silence in the courtroom was as heavy as those moments after delivering difficult news to a patient's family. Their what? Loretta whispered in shock. The wellness investment. Patricia said, tears streaming down her face, destroying her perfect makeup. You said you could quadruple their retirement savings through holistic financial approaches. They took a second mortgage on their home to invest with you. I convinced them it was safe. Vincent slumped in his chair, the posture of complete defeat I'd seen in patients receiving terminal diagnoses. Your Honor, Naomi said into the heavy silence, with the same compassionate authority I used when advocating for patient dignity. Given these revelations of fraud and the structural damage to the property, we ask that ownership be immediately returned to my client, with all renovation and repair costs to be paid by the defendant. Agreed, the judge said without hesitation. The sale is invalidated effective immediately. Mr. Reed, you and your wife have 48 hours to remove any remaining personal belongings from the premises. He turned to the federal agents. He's all yours. As the agents approached Vincent with handcuffs, Patricia grabbed her designer purse and practically ran from the courtroom like a family member unable to face difficult news. Loretta stood, her voice breaking with the controlled emotion of a teacher disappointed by a favorite student. Vincent, I need to hear you explain this. Mom, I can explain everything. The market fluctuations, explain what? Loretta interrupted with the sharp precision she'd used to cut through student excuses for decades. How you lied to me for months. How you made me believe Elaine had abandoned you for her career when you were the one betraying her. How you used my reputation as a respected educator to lend credibility to your schemes. She walked out, head high despite her tears. Cassandra followed to offer support. Elaine, Vincent called desperately as the agents led him past in handcuffs. Please, you have to help me. For the sake of what we once had. You're a hospice nurse, you're supposed to be compassionate. What we once had died the moment you chose to betray not just me, but everyone who trusted you. I met his eyes with the direct gaze I used when delivering difficult but necessary truths. I was caring for my mother, administering her pain medication, fighting to give her dignity in her illness, and you were exploiting vulnerable people who trusted you. This isn't revenge, Vincent, this is the natural consequence of your choices. Consequences, Ramirez added professionally, that currently carry a minimum sentence of 15 years for securities fraud of this magnitude. As Vincent was led away still protesting about market conditions, Naomi handed me a set of keys. Congratulations, the house is legally yours again. What's left of it after the water damage, anyway? I turned the keys over in my hand, feeling their weight, similar to how I felt when returning a deceased patient's personal items to their family. You know what's ironic? I don't want it anymore. Too many contaminated memories. It's no longer the healing space it once was. Then sell it, she suggested with practical compassion, legally this time, with full disclosure. Use the proceeds to start something fresh and meaningful. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother Marilyn. Just saw the news report about Vincent's arrest. Are you all right, sweetheart? Your father would be so proud of your strength. I smiled, typing back, better than okay. I'm finally free to move forward. Looking around the emptying courtroom, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, similar to when a patient finally finds peace. Vincent's elaborate web of lies and fraud had collapsed under its own weight, just like I'd seen happen with families who couldn't maintain false narratives around illness. I hadn't just exposed his betrayal, I'd protected others from becoming his victims. Ready to go? Cassandra asked, returning from comforting Loretta. Yes, I said, standing with renewed purpose. I think it's time to build something meaningful out of this experience. As we left the courthouse, I heard Vincent's voice echoing down the corridor as he was led away, still protesting about market conditions and wellness revolutions, but his words, like his investment promises, rang hollow now. Sometimes, the most healing approach isn't active intervention at all. It's simply stepping aside and allowing truth to emerge naturally. The moving truck pulled away from my former house, carrying the last of my belongings, my nursing books, patient journals, and gardening supplies. I stood in the freshly repaired driveway, holding the final paperwork from the legitimate sale. Are you absolutely certain about this decision? Cassandra asked, watching the truck disappear around the corner. Completely. I handed the papers to Naomi, who'd stopped by to oversee the final transfer and ensure everything was properly documented. The proceeds from the sale will help so many families in crisis. The people Vincent hurt through his fraud. The Patient Support Fund is a beautiful application of your hospice philosophy, Loretta said, joining us with a notebook of ideas. She looked older now, but more at peace. I've added my own contribution from my teacher's pension. It's the least I can do to help repair some of the damage. My phone buzzed, a text from Mrs. Thornhill, just met the new homeowners. Lovely young physician and her husband. They're planning to restore the medicinal herb garden to its former glory for educational purposes. Speaking of restoration, Cassandra said, have you told them about the Marilyn Walsh Caregiver Support Foundation? I nodded. The idea had crystallized during Vincent's sentencing hearing, watching Patricia's parents learn they'd lost their retirement savings to his wellness wealth scheme. My mother, now in remission and back to teaching community art classes, had helped me develop the concept, a foundation to support families dealing with serious illness while simultaneously facing financial fraud. The first assistance grants go out next week, I said with the satisfaction I felt when seeing a good care plan implemented. 3 families will be able to focus on their loved ones' care instead of worrying about mortgage payments and medical bills. Unlike some people, Naomi added, checking her phone, who'll be worrying about legal bills for quite a while. Patricia just filed for bankruptcy protection. Her wellness influencer business collapsed when the supplements were found to contain harmful ingredients. Loretta sighed. Her parents had to sell their home, but they're all living with her sister now. They're rebuilding slowly. She paused, her educator's face showing complex emotions. Vincent's been writing to me from detention, asking for money for his commissary account, of course. Of course, Cassandra commented with the dry humor that had sustained us through nursing school. Has he apologized yet for exploiting your name and reputation? No. He's still claiming he did it all for the greater good and that the wellness revolution was just ahead of its time. Loretta shook her head with the wisdom of someone who'd heard every possible student excuse. He doesn't understand that genuine care for others never exploits their trust or vulnerabilities. A car pulled into the driveway, the new owners arriving to complete their final walkthrough. The young woman was pregnant, her husband supporting her gently as they walked toward us, reminding me of countless expectant couples I'd counseled through end-of-life planning for their elderly parents. Ms. Reed, the husband asked, a young doctor I recognized from St. Mary's. We just wanted to thank you for choosing our offer. We know there were significantly higher bids from developers. Your letter about our plans for the house really moved us both. Your vision for creating a healing home environment, I said with genuine warmth, about wanting to raise your family here and build a home office for your medical research, it resonated deeply with me. I handed them a small wooden box I'd crafted during my mother's recovery. These are all the detailed garden plans for the medicinal herbs and native plants I grew here, along with paint samples that promote restfulness. These colors brought me peace during difficult shifts once. Maybe they'll do the same for your family after long hospital days. The woman hugged me spontaneously, her eyes teary in the way I'd seen so many grateful family members. Thank you. As healthcare professionals, we promise to honor the healing energy you created in this house. Better, I said with the gentle encouragement I used with new hospice volunteers. Honor it by creating your own healing story here. Make it uniquely yours. After they went inside to complete their inspection, Naomi checked her watch with the precision of someone who values every minute. Ready for the next chapter in your journey? I nodded with determination. We drove across town to a modern office building with large windows that flooded the space with natural light. Inside, a commercial realtor waited with another set of carefully prepared documents. The lease agreement is ready for signatures, she said. Ground floor with street access, perfect for the community-focused center you described. I signed where indicated with steady hands, then handed the pen to Cassandra. She signed as my business partner, grinning with the excitement we'd shared during nursing school graduations. A community wellness resource center, she exclaimed, with a special section for patient advocacy resources and financial literacy for medical crisis planning, plus dedicated space for support groups in the back. Don't forget the therapeutic garden patio, I added with genuine enthusiasm. Mom's already starting the medicinal herb seedlings she'll tend there. Her art therapy classes will give people a creative outlet during treatment cycles. Loretta examined the floor plans with a teacher's careful eye. The shared experiences library corner is brilliant. People navigating health and financial crises need to know they're not alone with their feelings. They're not, I said with the conviction I'd developed through years of hospice work. That's the foundation of healing, connection, and understanding. Walking through the empty space, I could already envision it coming together. Warm, adjustable lighting for sensitive eyes, comfortable chairs arranged for conversation and support, shelves of resources offering both practical guidance and emotional comfort. A place where people navigating health crises and financial challenges could find information, community, and hope. My phone buzzed again, this time a notification from the court system. Vincent Reed's latest appeal has been denied. He would serve his full sentence for securities fraud and elder financial exploitation. Still processing this news, Cassandra asked gently, watching my expression as I read the message, "Are you feeling vindicated now? Or is it something different?" I looked around the space that would soon become a sanctuary for others facing situations similar to my mother's. I'm at peace because something meaningful and helpful has emerged from something painful. That's the cycle I witness every day in hospice care. Speaking of meaningful work, Naomi said, checking her calendar, don't forget tomorrow's planning meeting with the patient advocate volunteers. I won't, I assured her, tucking my phone away. Mom's bringing her watercolor supplies for the art therapy demonstration. We secured the empty space that would soon be filled with purpose and community. Outside, the setting sun painted the sky in gradient hues that reminded me of my carefully planned healing garden at the old house. Ready to head home, Elaine asked Cassandra, dangling her car keys. I took one final look at the building that represented my new beginning, built from the difficult experience of betrayal, like so many patient journeys I'd witnessed. More than ready. I've learned through my hospice work that true healing isn't about destroying someone else's world through revenge. It's about creating something meaningful from your painful experiences, something that helps others find their way through similar darkness. That's not revenge at all, that's the transformation that gives meaning to suffering. And as we drove away, I smiled with genuine contentment, knowing I'd chosen the path I'd always advocated for my patients, the challenging path of creating meaning from pain, but the one that ultimately leads to healing, not just for me, but for everyone touched by Vincent's betrayal and my mother's illness. That legacy of care was worth more than any revenge could ever be.
The eldest son and his wife for returning from an overseas assignment. So you need to leave within 3 days. I can't stand having an outsider like you in our family. So this past week was the final push to get me out. Exactly. Megan, my mother-in-law, fussily moved into our newlywed home and did whatever she pleased. When my husband went on business trips, she took advantage of his absence to start severe harassment against me. I'm the one paying the $3K rent. I knew from the beginning that she didn't like me. However, due to her extreme treatment, I decided to stop overthinking things and just accept the situation. After being treated like this, can I still worry about my relationship with my mother-in-law? It's too much hassle to think about, so I'll just do what I want. As soon as I left the house, I called the moving company. Within 3 minutes, aita clothes. This might make Megan homeless, but the me who had decided to be defiant had no compassion left. I am Nora. I'm 32 years old and work as a sales representative at a real estate company. I'm not married yet, but I'm about to be. I met my husband, Ricky, who works at a consulting firm, through an acquaintance. So our romance doesn't have any dramatic stories worth telling. However, my husband is good at his job and kind, and as a bonus, when I show his photo to people around me, they envy me because he's such a refreshing and handsome guy. He's an almost too good partner for me. Right now, I'm at the peak of happiness, heading towards marriage. But I'm so happy that I fear only bad things will happen from now on. And my prediction turns out to be somewhat accurate. It all started on the day I went to greet my mother-in-law, Megan, about our marriage. So what do you do for work? I work as a sales representative at a real estate company. Sales, huh? Megan narrowed her eyes and looked at me with a disdainful gaze. It seems she doesn't like the fact that I'm in sales. Seeing her expression, my husband quickly stepped in to defend me. Even though she's in sales, Nora has quite good results and is highly evaluated by her company. You don't have to rush to defend her. I want to oppose the marriage or anything, but even if she has good results, it's still just sales, right? She's probably planning to rely on your income in the future, isn't she? You work at a consulting firm, works hard, and is valued by his company, right? Even though you're still in your 30s, You already earns close to $4K a month. Do you think she is a good match for someone like you? Hey, stop talking about money. You said you wouldn't oppose the marriage. But isn't that exactly what you're doing? That's not what I mean. Marriage is something the two of you should decide on your own. I'm just expressing my opinion. I think it's important to clarify these things in advance, especially when there's something I don't like. Even though it was supposed to be a marriage greeting, the atmosphere kept getting worse. It wouldn't be good for my husband to argue with Megan and make things worse. I nudged my husband under the table, silently signaling him to stop talking. Megan is right. I think Ricky is too good for me. That's why I plan to work hard to become a person worthy of being Ricky's wife. Don't think you can fool me with words. If you want me to trust you, you need to show it through actions and results. I understand. Although she made a bitter face, Megan stopped her verbal attacks. It wasn't exactly smooth, but it seemed we managed to finish the marriage greetings somehow. On the way home, my husband told me more about his mother. I'm sorry about my mom today. You had already told me about your mother's personality, so I was prepared. But I didn't expect to be disliked that openly. It's probably because of Dad. Your father divorced your mom when you were in high school, right? Yeah. The reason for the divorce was that Dad was self-employed, and Mom complained that it was his fault we were poor and that he should earn more. What? Was your father's income that low? I don't know the exact amount, but he probably had an average salary. But Mom didn't work, and, while it wasn't at the level of luxury or waste, she spent money however she wanted. I know what you mean. I think the same. So after the wedding, feel free to keep your distance from Mom as much as possible. Is that really okay? It's fine. My brother Chris and I send Mom money, but she usually only contacts us about that, so there shouldn't be much for you to deal with. And if there is, they'll handle it, but I can't let you deal with everything. If there's anything about your mom, they'll help. From what my husband said, it seemed like she was someone who prioritized money above all else. However, I had only met her once. I believed that as I interacted with her more, I would understand her and be able to get along. But later, I would regret my naive thinking. Once the wedding was over, my husband and I started our newlywed life. We splurged and rented a room on the 20th floor of a high-rise apartment in the city center for our home. It was a 2 LDK apartment with a rent of $3K. Though the rent seemed high for the size, given the location and the excellent concierge services, it seemed reasonable. My husband, who had initially hesitated at the $3K rent, found it comfortable after moving in, and was now living in high spirits. I thought it was extravagant to rent such a nice place, but it's really comfortable. See, I told you this place was good. Yay, you're right. The contract and the move went smoothly, too. As expected, Nora, you're a real pro in the real estate industry. We always sit on the living room sofa, enjoying our conversations as a couple. The topics aren't anything significant. We talk about TV shows, the meat that was on sale at the supermarket, or complain about work. Such ordinary daily life was incredibly happy for me. However, that blissful newlywed life soon came to an end. About a month after our new life began, Megan arrived without any notice. What's going on, Mom? What's going on? I thought you might have settled down since it's been about a month since you moved, so I came to check on you. Is it strange for a mother to check on how her child is living? It's not that, but we also have our own plans, you know. We happen to be home today, but even on holidays, we might be out. Fine, I'll make sure to contact you next time, okay? Once inside the house, Megan walked ahead of us down the hallway. Even though she had said she would contact us next time, her attitude didn't seem very apologetic. Wow, the sink and bath are clean. The toilet is spacious, and the kitchen is wide. What about this room? That's our bedroom. So if you could please refrain from entering. It doesn't matter, does it? Ignoring my words, Megan opened the bedroom door and went in. My husband and I exchanged glances, frowning. Wow, the closet is big too. What's inside? Without noticing the tense atmosphere we exuded, Megan began rummaging around the bedroom. Honestly, I wanted her to stop. However, if I strongly admonished her here, the atmosphere might turn sour like it did during the marriage greeting. Since I hadn't given up on reconciling with Megan, I decided to endure it for now. And this room across the hall. After finishing her inspection of the bedroom, Megan moved on to check another room. This room is quite simple. Just a desk, a computer, and a few other things. We're using this room as a workspace for when we work from home. But in the future, we plan to turn it into a nursery. A nursery, huh? After completing her inspection of the house, Megan sat down on the living room sofa. It didn't particularly matter, but it felt as if my usual spot had been taken, which made me feel a bit uncomfortable. When I brought out tea and snacks, Megan took a sip of tea and began checking on the rent. The living room is spacious too. The location is good, so the rent must be high, right? Well, it's reasonable. How much is it? That's not something you need to know. Of course, I need to know. Why should you hide it from your parent? Megan's eyes narrowed as she looked at us. Since she prioritized financial matters, she likely wanted to have a precise understanding of the rent. Thus, when we tried to evade the topic, she clearly radiated an aura of displeasure. Sensing this aura, my husband seemed to decide that not telling her would cause more trouble. $3K. $3K. That's impressive. But Ricky's monthly income is around $4K. Right. Did he get a raise? If so, you should increase the remittance amount. That's not it. Nora is covering the rent. Oh, you're contributing a little too, aren't you? Of course. It would feel awkward to live in such a nice house without contributing anything. Mom, I'm starting to get a sense of Megan. I think it's best not to talk too much about money with her. When I tugged on the hem of my husband's shirt, it was as if I had pulled the string on a switch. His words stopped immediately. However, his expression, looking at me, still showed a frown. That day, Megan left after we finished dinner. Even though it was supposed to be a relaxing day off, I felt more exhausted than when I worked, and collapsed onto the sofa. Good job. Good job. Today was unexpected, but I think it's rare. Since my parents' house is far away, I don't think she'll come often. I hope so. I lay on the sofa, occupying my husband's space, staring blankly at the ceiling for a while. As my husband said, Megan didn't show up again for a while. However, about 6 months later, Megan did something beyond our imagination. Could you bring that into the room? Excuse me. Wait a minute. What is this? What do you mean? It's my luggage. How rude. One day, while my husband and I were relaxing on the sofa as usual, movers suddenly arrived and started bringing in her belongings. What do you mean, luggage? You have extra rooms, right? I like this apartment because it's nice and in a good location. So I decided to move in. Move in? You can't just decide that on your own. Take your stuff back. That's impossible. I've already canceled the lease on the house I was living in. What? If you kick me out, I'll be homeless with all this luggage. Would you still kick me out? It was a cunning move. Thinking that we couldn't possibly make Megan homeless, we blankly watched as the movers continued to bring in her belongings. But the unloading never seemed to stop. There's no more room in this apartment. In that case, please put what you can in the living room. As planned, the rest can go into the storage unit. Is there still more? I thought I threw away the things I didn't need when I left the house. But there were so many things I thought were too good to throw away. Oh, I rented a slightly larger storage unit, so please cover the monthly fee. It's $90 a month, but that's okay. Right, we were already in a do-whatever-you-want state. After the movers left, I sat on the sofa, dazed. The view from the sofa was different from usual. The living room, which we had tried to keep minimal, was now filled with chests, shelves that didn't match the interior, and a small wooden owl souvenir from some trip on the TV stand. Since there was no space left, a doll in a case was placed on the table in front of me. Other things that completely disregarded the concept my husband and I had for the room were scattered everywhere. Nora, could you help me organize the luggage? Okay. I had already lost the will to resist, so I weakly stood up from the sofa and, as if brainwashed, followed Megan's instructions. That night, my husband and I held a meeting in our bedroom. Suddenly living together like this is too much. I think so too. But who would have thought she would take such extreme measures as giving up her house? Yea, we couldn't exactly ask her to leave in that situation. We'll try consulting with Chris. But he works for a foreign company and lives overseas with his wife, Grace. Right, yes, but actually, they're planning to move back to the U.S. Grace is pregnant, and they want to raise the child in the States. So they've been asking the company to transfer him back to the U.S. branch. Once Chris comes back, we can meet and discuss this together. And things might change. Can you bear living together for a little longer? We couldn't just kick Megan out and make her homeless, so we had no choice but to endure. In this situation, with no options, my husband and I sighed simultaneously. A few days later, it was decided that Chris and his wife would return to the U.S. However, they were not coming back for another 3 months. Thus began my 3-month ordeal. Why are you getting home later than Ricky? I heard that sometimes Ricky is the one cooking and cleaning. I have busy days at work too. Don't make excuses. You're living off Ricky, aren't you? It's your job to make sure Ricky can relax at home. Mom, I've told you before, Nora is the one paying the rent. Ricky must be covering most of the rent. Right? No. Nora pays all the rent. I'm covering the living expenses and other miscellaneous costs, and the rest goes into savings for the future. What? Before I could stop him, my husband blurted out the truth. I thought it might have been better not to mention it. She is truly obsessed with money. She's even asked for an increase in the remittance when she suspected my husband's salary had risen. So knowing that I earned more than she imagined, I feared she might start demanding money from me. However, her reaction was unexpected. Ricky, you're so kind. Are you trying to protect Nora by lying? It's not a lie. Nora earns more than I do. More than $4K a month in sales. I can't believe that. Is it true? Well, my company has an incentive system. Do you think I'm a fool? I know what an incentive system is. Chris Consulting Firm has one, too, and he earns $4K a month. But you're saying sales incentives are over $4K a month. If you're going to lie, you should coordinate your stories better. Feeling insulted, Megan stormed off to the room she had claimed. Apparently, her perception that salespeople don't earn much was deeply ingrained, likely because her ex-husband, my father-in-law, had been in sales. This wasn't the last time we had a similar argument. However, Megan seemed convinced that my husband was protecting me, and she would always get angry and stop listening halfway through the conversation. Feeling constantly belittled, Her already negative attitude toward me intensified. At the worst possible time, my husband was sent on a business trip. "I'm sorry to leave you alone with Mom at a time like this. It's just a week, and I'll be fine. Besides, Chris and Grace will be back soon. Are you sure you'll be okay? If Mom does anything, call me. I'll come back immediately. You can't just abandon work for that. Go and do your job well." Looking worried, my husband left the house. I stood at the entrance until I could no longer hear the sound of his suitcase rolling away. I knew Megan would likely try something now that my husband was gone, but thinking it was only for a week, I felt I could endure a little trouble. Also, with Chris and his wife returning soon, we planned to have a family meeting about Megan. I didn't want to trouble my husband. I steeled myself, thinking of this week as the final hurdle I had to overcome alone. But I had forgotten that Megan was someone who could easily surpass my imagination in her actions. "Hey, can you hurry up with dinner?" "Yes, I'll get it ready right away. You come home late because you dawdle at work. Someone like you, no matter how hard you try for 1,000 years, could never have a respectable job like Ricky or Chris." It began with the typical harassment, forcing all the housework on me. Megan didn't lift a finger around the house and remained on the sofa all day. The scene didn't change from when I left for work to when I came back. However, I was mentally prepared for this level of annoyance, so it didn't affect me much. At most, I was slightly irritated that she had taken over my usual spot on the sofa. But her harassment didn't stop there. One day, as I was coming home from work, I encountered some people chatting in the apartment entrance. Among them was a woman who lived on the same floor as us. When she noticed me, she walked over with a slightly uncomfortable expression. It's not really my place to say this, but I think you should treat your family better." "Excuse me." 3 question marks might as well have appeared above my head. As I listened further, I discovered rumors about me. That I neglected housework, didn't feed Megan, had an affair, and once tearfully begged my husband for forgiveness. The only possible source of these rumors was Megan. I hurried back home, and as soon as I saw her, I confronted her. "Megan, please stop spreading false rumors about me." I was so embarrassed when I heard what people were saying. "Oh, that's funny," she laughed, not even bothering to move from the sofa, only turning her head toward me. This wasn't a laughing matter for me. Though I had managed to clear up the misunderstanding earlier, I knew how much damage a widespread rumor could cause. I was now certain that I'd have to live in discomfort in the apartment until the gossip died down. Her antics didn't end there. One day, when I returned home from work, I found the usual sight of her sitting on the sofa, but the rest of the room had changed. The curtains and mats are different, and the TV stand. Where are the house plants? I replaced the things that didn't suit my taste. Doesn't it look nicer this way? The house plants were just in the way, so I threw them out. A shelf would make better use of the space. What about the old curtains and mats? Where did you put them? Oh, I threw them out. They were useless. By the way, I used the money you kept in your bedroom for emergencies to buy the new stuff. You used our emergency cash without asking. It's only $300. No big deal. But since that wasn't enough, I covered the rest. You'll pay me back later. If anyone deserved to be reimbursed, it was us. I could overlook the money, but throwing out the curtains and other items was unforgivable. Those were things my husband and I had picked out together when we were newlyweds. Imagining our future, she had discarded them without a second thought. I found myself clenching my fists. That night, I contemplated calling my husband to discuss it, but I didn't want to disturb his work. I decided to endure. reminding myself that this living arrangement was temporary. I placed my phone down and went to bed early. The next morning, as I was leaving for work, I noticed a tapestry I didn't like hanging on the wall by the entrance. It had been there the previous night, so she must have put it up early in the morning. Why would she even hang something like that? She used push pins to secure the string, leaving holes in the wall. I just wanted her to stop these impulsive actions. Ouch! As I put on my shoes, I felt a sharp pain under my right foot. I sat down, lifting my foot off the ground. Upon inspecting my shoe, I found 3 push pins inside, all carefully placed with the sharp ends facing up. Oops, I must have dropped them when I was hanging the tapestry and didn't notice, Megan said from behind me, smiling wickedly. You did this on purpose, didn't you? Of course not. It was an accident, really. Immold, my hands are unsteady, and my eyesight isn't what it used to be. I thought I could endure Megan's mistreatment for just 1 week, but I had underestimated the situation. With all the accumulated grievances, my eyes began to well up. To hide my tears, I sat on the floor by the entrance, turning my back to Megan as I spoke. Why are you doing this? You already know the answer. I don't like you. You're just a parasite leeching off Ricky. Chris and his wife are coming back from their overseas assignment, so you have 3 days to leave. I don't want someone like you, an outsider, mixing into our family. At least be like Grace, fluent in French and capable of working abroad. Anything less is unacceptable. So this past week was just your final push to get me out. Exactly. I couldn't see her face, but I could clearly imagine her devilish smile behind me. I'm the one paying the $3K rent. But who would believe me? What am I supposed to do now? I shook the push pins out of my shoe and onto the ground. Looking at them, I decided to stop enduring. After all this, is there any point in worrying about my relationship with her? Forget it. I'll do things my way. I'll inform Ricky afterward. He'll understand. I stood up, turned to Megan, and greeted her cheerfully. Well then, I'm off to work. She was visibly shocked by my sudden change in demeanor, her eyes wide in disbelief. As soon as I left the house, I called a moving company. Within 3 minutes. Hello, I'd like to move today if possible. Yes, please pack everything for me. How much stuff? Quite a lot. What? The large trucks are all out today. Do you have smaller ones? 8 2-ton trucks and light trucks. All right, I'm in a hurry, so let's go with the 8 trucks. I decided to take the day off work and move out. 3 days after the move, I was staying in a business hotel. Today was the day my husband was returning from his business trip. It was also the day Chris and his wife were coming back from abroad. I'm back. I'm waiting downstairs. My husband called to let me know he was waiting for me. He had come to pick me up from the hotel. Together, we would return to the house where Megan was. As we arrived at the front door, the place felt oddly nostalgic, even though it had only been 3 days. I unlocked the door and slowly opened it. What is the meaning of this? Although I had opened the door quietly, Megan must have heard the sound. She navigated around the luggage in the hallway, stomping her way toward me, ready to pounce. But my husband quickly stepped between us, shielding me. Hey, stop it. Mom, you're the one in the wrong here. No, it's her fault. She moved out her own stuff and forced my things from the storage room into the house. We decided to move, so of course we took our belongings. And we kindly brought your stuff inside since the house was now empty. You should be thanking us, not getting angry. Megan glared at me. However, I wasn't scared at all by that look. The day I left the house, I had decided to have 8 trucks sent by the moving company. 3 of those trucks went to the storage unit where Megan's belongings were kept, and they moved her things into the house. The storage area wasn't very large, so it seemed that the light trucks were just the right fit, and the work proceeded smoothly. The remaining 5 trucks went to the house, and while coordinating by phone, they moved everything I owned out of the house. It turned out that I had overestimated the number of trucks, and one of them ended up driving empty. Our belongings that were moved out were instead relocated to the storage unit. Since one storage unit wasn't enough to fit everything, I rented an additional one to fit the remaining items. Our belongings will be retrieved from the storage once we've found a new place to live. We already have a new place lined up, and later today, we'll be going with my husband for a viewing. I think this light-footedness in house hunting comes naturally to real estate agents. Didn't Mom say it herself? The location is great, and she liked this apartment, so we decided to live here. It wasn't that she wanted to live with us. It was just that she liked it. So I decided to give it to Mom. Give it to me. I've already taken care of the lease termination here. This place is connected to my company, so I was able to arrange for Megan to come and renew the lease. But you'll need to come and sign the contract within a week. They won't wait longer, and if you don't, you'll be kicked out, so be careful. What? I'm supposed to renew the lease for a $3K rent house? That's impossible. Look at the amount of stuff I have. I still need to find another place to move to. I can't do all that in a week. I don't know what to tell you. Don't get cocky, you parasite leeching off my son. Is that something you, who just barged into our home, doesn't work, and pays nothing, has the right to say? I'm Ricky's mother, so it's fine. Since Ricky is paying the rent, I have the right to live here. I see. That's your reasoning. In that case, Megan doesn't have the right to live here. What do you mean? I've said it many times already. The rent for this house is paid by Nora, not me. That's impossible. Someone working in sales, a young person in their 30s, how could they possibly make $4K a month? I work in new home sales. Since I sell newly built homes, do you think the incentives would be high? New home sales. And Nora, who's good at her job, makes $4K a month. No, it's not $4K. It's $10K a month. That's about $200K a year. Of course, it varies depending on performance. $10K a month. Well, without that kind of income, you can't afford a $3K house. Megan's angry expression gradually softened as she seemed to finally understand my income. So that's how it is. Nora must be really good at her job. I'm sorry for misunderstanding you all this time. So, do you have a place lined up for the next move? A place better than this? Is there a room for me? If not, we'll be fine just sleeping anywhere there. After learning about my income, she suddenly changed her attitude. It seemed she was now panicking, realizing that she would soon be without a place to stay. Sweat was beginning to bead on her forehead. Unfortunately, Megan, I won't be living with you. I'm sure you understand why, right? If you come here saying you have no place to stay, they'll just send you away. What? Ricky? Say something. I'm the same as Nora now. I can't live with Mom anymore. After all that she's done to ruin our newlywed life and make her suffer, you have to pay for what you did. What? She must have thought that, just like before, everything would somehow work out, even with such terrible behavior. But this time was different. The sweat on Megan's forehead began to clump together and fall off in droplets. Megan, abandoned by my husband, seemed to be in complete panic. However, just as we thought there was no hope left, her expression brightened as if she had found a glimmer of light. Sorry I'm late. It's really late, Chris. We're almost done. Sorry. How is Grace feeling? Just fine. Let her meet both of you later. Chris, listen. Ricky and them are terrible. The terrible one is you. Right. I heard everything from Ricky. Please don't come to our house anymore. I just came here to say that. And from now on, we'll stop sending you money. What? How am I supposed to live now? Mom, you're only 60, right? You can still work. Think of it as paying for all the fun you had until now. The hope Megan felt disappeared with those words. She seemed to feel despair, and she collapsed to the ground. Well, let's go. We left the house, leaving Megan behind. After that, since Megan wasn't working, she couldn't afford the $3K rent and had to move out. It turned out she didn't have enough money. And fearing she might actually become homeless, my husband and Chris prepared a cheap apartment for her. However, they made it clear they wouldn't be helping her anymore. Having been abandoned by my husband and Chris, Megan finally decided to start working. However, with almost no work experience, her job options were limited. Now, she works part-time at supermarkets and restaurants, juggling multiple jobs. At work, she's apparently called slow by college students, and it seems she's mentally exhausted from it. Still, she can't afford to quit and continues working every day to survive. This kind of struggle is something anyone might experience. However, since she had never had to go through it before, it must have been even harder for Megan at 60. Chris and his wife had a healthy baby boy. His sleeping face is truly angelic. Megan hasn't seen the baby's sleeping face. She apparently wanted to visit for the baby shower, but was turned away. She has only seen her first grandchild in photos that were sent to her. Well, this is her own doing. We rented a new house and began to restart our newlywed life. Seeing Chris and his wife's baby, we've started to think about having children too. We already have a room ready for the baby, and we're eagerly awaiting the arrival of the stork at our home. Hey, are you planning to visit us for the new year? Yay, I think I'll come. By the way, it's been about a year since I started sending you money, hasn't it? Thank you for the $200 every month. The electricity and gas are still off, but because of your rent support, I've managed to get by. What? I've been sending you $2K every month, haven't I? $5K. What are you talking about? My mother lives in an apartment with an incredibly low rent of $200. For certain reasons, I've been sending her $2K every month for about a year. But it seems that money hasn't been reaching her. When I investigated where the money was going, I discovered it was being funneled into someone else's account. The idea that someone was tampering with my mother's money made my blood boil. Because of this theft, my mother has had to endure a life where even basic utilities like gas and electricity were cut off. I decided to teach the culprit a lesson. They need to understand what it means to mess with $2K a month, an amount far from modest as a remittance. My name is Brittany. I'm 50 years old and work as a consultant. The reason I chose this career stems from how I was raised. My parents, Shirley and Frederick, ran a small metalworking business in a rural area. It wasn't a big company, just my parents and a handful of employees. Mom's favorite saying was always, "Our finances are tight, so don't expect much." Still, while luxury was out of reach, our family of 3 lived comfortably enough to afford me a college education. Although Mom constantly claimed the business was struggling, her words seemed a bit exaggerated. Dad, Frederick, also had a mantra he lived by. In this day and age, you need to learn how to survive on your own. He drilled this into me from as early as elementary school, and honestly, I grew to resent hearing it. Growing up watching my parents struggle with their business and constantly being told to become self-reliant, I ended up pursuing a career in consulting. Of course, when I graduated college and was ready to enter the workforce, I considered helping out at my father's company. But Dad shut that idea down immediately. No way. Once you graduate, get a job, and move out, he demanded, practically pushing me out of the house. At the time, he never explained his reasoning. Looking back, though, I think I understand. He probably realized that helping out in his struggling business would only lead to hardships for me. He also seemed determined to close the company once his generation was done with it, meaning I'd have to find a new job once he retired. His insistence on kicking me out wasn't mere coldness. It was his version of kindness. Still, there were moments I questioned whether his approach was just tough love or unnecessary harshness. Don't worry about us. Stop calling all the time. Just visit once at the end of the year. That's enough. Even after I started working, just making a phone call home would earn his scolding. I wasn't trying to bother them. I was just curious about how they were doing. But Dad's stand on your own philosophy extended well into my adulthood. Perhaps he thought I'd start venting about my job woes or something, and he wanted no part of it. Frustrated by his reactions, I decided to throw myself completely into my work. 4 years later, I heard a colleague was leaving because she was getting married and having a baby. That's when it hit me. All my life, I'd been following my father's words, focusing on studying and working hard. I don't regret the path I've taken, but at this point, my number of boyfriends matched my age. 0. Is this really the life I want? Dad always said to learn to stand on my own 2 feet. But surely he didn't mean for me to live my entire life alone, did he? I felt that if things continued this way, I'd never get married, nor would I ever be able to give my parents the joy of seeing their grandchild. Seeing the radiant expression of a colleague who was leaving work due to pregnancy, I suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of urgency. I was still only 26, so there was still time. I wanted to take action immediately, but having never been in a relationship before, I had no idea where to start. Was love something you could achieve just by trying? That's where I started. The first step for someone like me, with 0 romantic experience, was to study. Just like tackling math or chemistry, I began reading dating how-to books. Unsurprisingly, this approach didn't lead to any breakthroughs, and time passed with no progress. I began feeling even more desperate. Noticing my growing anxiety, a friend introduced me to someone they knew. That person would later become my husband, Alexander. There's this pizza place nearby that opens at 11 p.m. and sells out in 3 hours. Want to check it out before heading home? I'm already full, and I have work tomorrow, so I should probably head back. Don't worry, they have small-sized pizzas, and if we leave now, we'll still catch the last train. Ignoring my hesitation, he began walking toward the pizza place. Alexander was a high school graduate who worked in sales. He was cheerful and a bit of a joker. As someone who had spent her entire life buried in studies and work, I couldn't help but admire his spontaneity, something I lacked. Before I realized it, we were dating, being entirely inexperienced in love. I hadn't even noticed the flow he had gently orchestrated. 1 year into our relationship, we got married. A year after that, we welcomed our son, Ray, into the world. Going from being completely inexperienced in love at 26 to marriage and motherhood in just 2 years was something I never expected. Life, as they say, is full of surprises. I have a marriage, a child, and a career. My life feels like it's on the right track. But after Ray's birth, My husband and I faced a major turning point. You're planning to go back to work after maternity leave, right? Of course. You're not going to suddenly tell me I can't, are you? Nope, not at all. I know how much you love your work. Actually, I have a suggestion. A suggestion. What is it? Between your consulting job and my sales position, you make way more money than I do. So, what if, once Ray gets a little older, I quit my job and become a house husband? Quit your job? Yes, but once Ray starts elementary or middle school, I'd pick up some part-time work. I thought his proposal made sense. If Alexander handled things at home, I could fully focus on the work I loved. While house husbands weren't very common yet, I knew they were becoming more accepted with changing work dynamics. And the fact that Alexander himself was suggesting it made it even better. All right. If that's what you want, let's do it. Great. Leave the house and Ray to me. I never imagined my husband would become a house husband, but it was clear that Alexander possessed something I didn't. He worked hard at parenting, allowing me to focus entirely on my job. When our son Ray became a junior high school student, Alexander started working part-time at a cafe, though he had no prior experience in food service. His background in sales and his naturally cheerful personality made the job a perfect fit. He genuinely seemed to enjoy it. Time passed, and before we knew it, Ray had graduated college, found a job, and moved out. Our journey as parents was complete. Thank you for everything. You've made it possible for me to focus on my work all these years. No, you helped out with raising Ray despite your busy job. And honestly, your hard work gave us a life without any real financial worries. In our now slightly roomier home, Alexander and I shared words of gratitude for the journey we had navigated together. I envisioned a more relaxed, tranquil phase of our lives as a couple. But true to form, Alexander surprised me with something I hadn't anticipated. Now that parenting is officially over, I've got a favor to ask. What is it? You're acting as restless as a child who needs to use the bathroom. Well, I want to open my own shop. A shop. Alexander had a habit of coming up with unexpected ideas, leaving me baffled. But more often than not, his ideas weren't reckless. They tended to lead to good outcomes. So I took a deep breath and let him explain. I've been working at the cafe for nearly a decade now, and I've always dreamed of having my own place someday. And look, I'm 51 already. If I don't take the leap now, I may never get another chance. I get that you want to open a shop, but what about the money? We have some savings, but it's meant for our retirement. I'd rather not dip into it. Don't worry. I'm planning to take out a loan. The owner of the cafe I work at has done it before and is introducing me to their contact. Plus, I've saved up a bit myself over the years. So you've got resources to lean on. I crossed my arms and furrowed my brow, lost in thought. Alexander had been working at the cafe for nearly 10 years, so he undoubtedly had the skills for the job. However, having the skills to do a job and having the skills to manage a business were entirely different things. As a consultant, I understood how challenging running a business could be. It was far from easy. That said, Alexander had given up his own career to focus on raising our son. Now that he had found something he wanted to pursue, I couldn't bring myself to block his path. As someone who loved my own work, I didn't want to deny him the chance to follow his passion. All right. If this is something you're determined to do on your own, I won't stop you. You've already made sacrifices, and I think you should follow your passion. Really. Thank you so much. Alexander did a fist pump, celebrating like an excited child. Seeing how happy he was made me feel happy too. But this decision would mark the beginning of regrets. With Alexander starting his own business, I thought we would both focus on our work and build a fulfilling life together as a couple. However, that vision was interrupted when I was struck by an unexpected misfortune, forcing our fulfilling life to be postponed. My part of the company paperwork is done. All that's left is helping Mom move. Alexander will help with that too. Thank you, both of you. I know you're busy. What are you saying? You'd struggle doing it all alone. There's so much to handle, and you'll want to relax once it's over, right? Mom and I stood before my father's now empty company building, a wave of bittersweet nostalgia washing over us. This marked the end of the business that had been such a large part of our family's story. About 10 months after Ray moved out, during the winter, my father passed away unexpectedly from thermal shock. We had already been preparing to close his company, so after his passing, I helped Mom shut it down completely. During the cleanup process, it became evident just how dire the financial situation had been. While I had grown up comfortably, able to attend college without any worries, it turned out my parents had been managing things behind the scenes, shielding me from their struggles. They must have worked tirelessly to ensure I wouldn't feel insecure or burdened by their difficulties. After the company was closed, Mom was left with about $60K in debt. She decided against filing for bankruptcy because there were sentimental items she didn't want to part with. Instead, she planned to pay off the debt slowly. Now living alone, she no longer needed such a large house and opted to move to a cheaper apartment. When Alexander and I saw her new place, we were stunned. Wait, is this really where you're moving? Yes, it is. The building belongs to an old acquaintance from the company days. They gave me an already low rent for an even lower price, just $200 a month. Isn't that amazing? Sure, the rent is cheap, but, Mom, are you sure this is what you want? It's perfect for me. The building may be old, but the unit is on the first floor, so no stairs to climb. Plus, it's close to the supermarket, the bank, and the hospital. You can't beat that. Mom beamed with pride over her new home. She was right, the location was ideal for a woman in her 70s. But the apartment itself was small, cramped, and lacked a bathtub. It reminded me of those exaggerated depictions of poverty you'd see in novels. Yet here it was, right before my eyes. As Alexander and I stood dumbfounded, Mom began moving her belongings into the room. Despite our hesitation, we joined her in unloading the boxes, still processing the reality of it all. After finishing moving the boxes, I decided to try once again to persuade my mom, even though she had already refused. Hey, Mom, why don't you move in with us after all? Alexander is okay with it too. That's right. Living here seems a bit. You two young ones might not know this, but back in the day, this is what most places were like. It's nostalgic and feels just right to me. Well, but things are different now compared to when you were younger. How rude. I'm still full of energy, you know. That's not really what I meant. I know what you're trying to say. But Ray just moved out, and you and Alexander are finally getting to enjoy time together as a couple. If I moved in, I'd feel like I was imposing. I'd rather stay on my own. Besides, Frederick always told you to learn to live independently, didn't he? How can I, as your mother, not practice what I preached? Mom dismissed our concerns with a laugh and what felt like a string of excuses. I knew this stubborn side of hers all too well. Once she made up her mind, no amount of reasoning could change it. It was probably that strong-willed nature, a trait common in business owners, that drove her. Normally, I would have given up, but this was one time I couldn't back down. I decided to propose a compromise. Mom, You're planning to live off your pension now, right? And since you'll be repaying your debts, at least let me send you some money. That's not right. It's your hard-earned money, so you should use it for yourself. Then I'll use my money however I like, and I'll choose to send it to you. It's my decision, isn't it? Now you're just being cheeky. Call it cheeky if you want. At least until your debts are gone. Once those are paid off, things will get much easier, right? Well, that's true, but then it's settled. For the first time, I managed to win an argument with Mom. If I had tried to have a proper discussion, Mom would never have agreed. So I skipped over all the details like the amount and the method of sending the money and decided to push through with the remittance plan forcefully. However, in doing so, I also ended up skipping the step of discussing it with my husband. On the way home after helping Mom move, I apologized to Alexander. I'm sorry for deciding about the remittance without talking to you first. It's fine. I think it's a good idea. But when you talked about opening your shop, I told you we shouldn't touch our savings since it's meant for retirement. Now I'm saying we should send money to Mom. I'm spending the money I've saved for my shop, so it's the same thing. You earn that money yourself. If you want to use it to help your mom, that's your choice. Don't worry about it. Thank you. So about the amount, I think it's better to pay off her debts quickly. How about $5K a month until the debt is gone, and then reduce it to around $800 a month? What do you think? Wait, $5K a month? When you said until her debts are gone, did you mean we're paying them off for her? Yes, that's what I meant. I thought you were planning to cover her living expenses while she used her pension to pay off her debts. Then once her debts were cleared, we'd reassess the amount. $5K a month. That means it'll take a year to pay off her debts. I'm sorry, I pushed things through so quickly that I didn't explain properly. It'll actually take more than a year to pay off her debts. Does that mean the remittance is a no-go? No, I already said you could use your money for this, so I can't go back on my word now. You're so stubborn about the strangest things. Thank you. Although Alexander had a hesitant expression, he agreed to the $5K monthly remittance. I doubt many husbands would be this understanding. I truly married a good man. A few days later, Alexander and I went to the bank to set up the automatic transfer. I'll take care of the setup, he offered. And just like that, Mom would receive $5K every month. On the first transfer day, I checked the bank book. The record of the transfer was there, so it seemed everything went smoothly. Since this was the first transfer, I thought it was necessary to confirm that the money had properly reached Mom. I decided to call her to check. Hi Mom, I sent the first remittance today. Did the money arrive? Yes, it's here. Given the large amount, mentioning it directly felt awkward. I also figured saying it out loud might make Mom feel self-conscious, so I avoided mentioning the $5K figure and kept the conversation casual. Mom, too, didn't bring up the amount. She was likely reading the atmosphere and matching my approach. It's been about a month since you moved. How's life in the new place? Are you finding it inconvenient? Honestly, not at all. Don't worry about me. Just focus on your own life and work. I was just trying to check in, but Mom ended up scolding me instead. She seemed to be becoming more like my father. Taking her words to heart, I decided to keep my contact with her to a minimum. About 4 months passed, and as summer rolled around, I started worrying about her again and called her. It must be hot in the countryside. Are you managing to stay cool and avoid heat exhaustion? I told you, I'm fine. The real question is, are you managing okay with work? Mom seemed to be doing just fine, so my worries appeared unnecessary. While I thought I should be more attentive to her, Other concerns were starting to occupy my mind. For now, I decided to rely on her words and ease my focus on her. You've been planning to open your shop for almost a year now. How's it coming along? I can't find the right location. Without a location, I can't finish the business plan. And without that, I can't secure the funds. You're usually so quick to act and bold in making decisions. It's unusual for you to take this long. Well, it's about the shop. I have to be cautious, don't I? It seemed Alexander didn't want me to bring up the shop too much. Whenever I did, he quickly tried to steer the conversation away. He probably knew better than anyone that he couldn't afford to delay things forever. A few more months passed, and as winter set in, Alexander's plans for his shop finally started moving forward. The scale ended up being much smaller than I initially planned. But the location is good, right? Yay! Plus, it's a fully equipped handover, so the renovation costs are much lower. That's why I chose it. With his dream almost realized, Alexander's face was constantly lit up with excitement. It seemed I no longer needed to worry about him. I turned my attention back to Mom. Hey, Brittany, are you coming here for New Year's? Yeah, I'm planning to. By the way, it's been about a year since I started the remittance, hasn't it? You should be nearly done with the debt, right? After the new year, we'll need to deal with that other thing. Let's talk about it then. What kind of joke is that? There's no way it's almost done. Don't make me laugh. Thanks for the $200 every month. The electricity and gas are still off, but your rent support helps me get by. What? I've been sending $2K every month, haven't I? What? $2K? What are you talking about? Didn't you say you'd send money until my debts were cleared? I thought that meant you'd cover the rent so I'd at least have a place to stay. I said I didn't need any remittance, so I assumed you respected my decision and set it at $200. Isn't that right? It seemed Mom had the same misunderstanding as Alexander. I felt my strength leave my body as the realization sank in. By forcing through the remittance plan, I had inadvertently caused confusion for Mom as well. Despite having her gas and electricity cut off, she hadn't asked for help, likely because she didn't want to worry me, as always. While I wished she had told me sooner, I knew that was an unrealistic hope. What mattered now was the present. However, there was something about our conversation that felt off. I decided to organize the information and asked Mom for more details. According to my bank records, $2K had been transferred each month, but she had only received $200. So where had the rest of the money I had been sending for the past year gone? I rushed to the bank to investigate the flow of the funds. It turned out the money had been diverted into someone else's account. Someone had been stealing from her remittance. Because of this theft, Mom had been forced to live in conditions where even her gas and electricity were cut off. As I left the bank, I clenched my fists tightly in anger. That evening, I decided to talk to Alexander about his shop. So, how's the shop coming along? Has the construction started? The tenant agreement is signed, and the construction has just begun. The plan is to open next month. And what about the finances? Are you set there? I've set aside about $40K for opening costs and another $40K for operational expenses. I kept costs low by choosing a smaller location and an existing setup, so the start-up costs weren't too high. The operational budget feels a bit tight, but I'll make it work. Alexander's expression was one of determination, but I already knew the truth behind it. He was building his castle, yet he was blind to the fact that he was a naked king. It was time to confront him with the reality. Did you manage to secure the loan? Yay, about $60K, I think. $60K out of the $80K. Are you sure that money was actually borrowed? Of course it was. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to sign a lease or start construction, would I? Are you sure it wasn't stolen instead? Well, I'm sorry. Alexander immediately realized that his lie had been uncovered. Without offering any excuses, he admitted to what he had done. How did you redirect my money into your account? Remember when we went to set up the transfer? I submitted the forms, right? While you weren't looking, I crossed out the original account details and wrote in my own. And that went through. The clerk asked me to rewrite it properly, but didn't say anything about the account number I changed. They processed it without issue. I felt a headache coming on from his foolish actions. The bank wasn't at fault here. This type of paperwork should have been handled personally, and leaving it to Alexander was my mistake. Besides, since we were there together, and I, the account holder, was right beside him, it wasn't surprising the bank accepted the form. I can already imagine the answer, but I'll ask anyway. Why did you do this? I tried applying for a loan, but I was denied. So you took money from Mom's remittance. The total over the past year is about $60K. And that's what you're using to open the shop. I'm really sorry. I said I'd open the shop on my own, so it was hard to admit I failed the loan application. I gave in to temptation. I just couldn't let go of the dream of opening my own shop. And what was your plan after the shop opened? I thought I'd save up the $60K while running the shop and return it to you. Then come clean and apologize. Did you really think you wouldn't get caught? I figured you didn't talk to Mom much or visit her more than once a year, so it wouldn't come up right away. And if it did, I'd admit the truth and start repaying the money then. If he had just been honest with me, I could have formally become the owner on paper and allowed him to run the shop. But instead, he chose this foolish, reckless route. The sheer absurdity of his plan left me dizzy, almost to the point of fainting. It was no wonder his loan application had been denied. Surely, his business plan must have been sloppy. $60K wasn't borrowed. It was stolen, wasn't it? And you're planning to save and return it. How long do you think that will take? And do you think an apology will suffice? Mom said her electricity and gas have been cut off since this month because of you. What? She has been struggling that much? Without electricity and gas, how can she live? Is she okay? I've already paid the bills, so she can use them now. But seriously, who do you think is responsible for her suffering? I don't want you worrying about her. Thinking about Mom's situation reignited my anger toward Alexander. I found myself clenching my fists again. I needed to put an end to this before I completely lost control. So what are you going to do about the money? The shop construction has already started, so I'd like to use the $40K in opening funds as planned. But for the operating funds, I'll return $20K for now. I'll use the remaining $20K to start the shop, then repay the rest over time. I know I'm asking for a ridiculous favor, but I've already signed a lease and started construction. Please, let me open the shop somehow. You'll return $20K first. Fine, that's acceptable. Really? Thank you. But how do you plan to run the shop with just $20K in operating funds? Well, I'll just have to manage with what I have. You still don't get it, do you? When we talked about the $5K remittance and Mom's $60K debt, you said it would take a year to pay it off. Do you remember me saying it would take more than a year? That's because of interest, right? But it shouldn't be a significant amount, should it? What are you talking about? Sending such a large amount clearly incurs gift taxes. Gift taxes. Are remittances subject to gift taxes? Regular remittances for living expenses aren't taxed, but an amount like $2K per month clearly exceeds what's considered living expenses. It's obvious it's taxable, but you always called it a remittance of $2K. That $2K included both living expenses and debt repayment. I just called it a remittance for simplicity. It'd be a hassle to specify remittance and debt repayment every time. And between spouses, gift taxes also apply. Does that mean I have to pay the gift tax? Exactly. Without going into deductions and other technicalities, roughly 20% of $60K would be taxed. That's about $12K. $12K on top of $60K. If you return $20K to mom, that leaves $20K for operating funds. And from that, you'd lose $12K to taxes, $8K for operating funds. That's impossible. Rent, wages, and the first month's expenses would eat that up immediately. You'd be on the edge of a cliff the moment the shop opens. How do you plan to run it like that? I can't. Please, let's forget about repaying Shirley $20K. I thought you couldn't go back on your word. Opening the shop under these circumstances is far too reckless. Alexander likely understands that better than anyone. However, I have no intention of helping him. In fact, I plan to steer things so that the shop cannot open at all. Knowing that he won't get my forgiveness, Alexander seems to be racking his brain, trying to find a way out of this situation. He scratches his head, his face filled with anxiety. I remain silent, curious and slightly amused, as I wait to hear what he'll come up with next. I've got it. What if I say I borrowed the money instead of receiving it as a gift? I was always planning to repay it anyway, so it's technically a loan, not a gift. His suggestion was laughable. Hey, if we're being technical, you didn't borrow it, you stole it. Well, if it's theft, that might actually work better. Family theft isn't subject to criminal charges, right? So calling it theft works in my favor. You did your research before stealing the money, didn't you? But it seems you didn't research enough. While family theft isn't criminally prosecuted, I can still file a civil claim for damages. That means I can sue you and recover the $60K. How do you know all this? I looked it up before talking to you. As a consultant, my research skills are far superior to yours. So choose. Either open the shop and run out of funds immediately, or let me sue you and take the $60K back right now. Even if Alexander opened the shop, it would inevitably close down soon after. Closing a shop also costs money, which would only increase his debt. If I sued him, he wouldn't be able to repay the $60K immediately. That would allow me to enforce a seizure of his shop's assets, making it impossible for him to continue running it anyway. Faced with no viable options, Alexander remained silent. At that moment, I offered him a third choice. Give up on opening the shop. Gather the remaining money and return it to me. We'll just call it a loan between spouses. Fine, I'll give up the shop. Alexander decided not to proceed with the shop and slumped in defeat. Shortly afterward, he collected the remaining funds and handed them over. The money he returned consisted of the $60K he had taken from mom's remittance and $20K he had saved on his own, totaling $80K. Out of that, $20K had already been spent on initial construction fees, tenant payments, and cancellation penalties for various contracts. Thankfully, $60K remained, which allowed him to return all the stolen money. This was originally meant for Mom, so I used the recovered funds to pay off her debts. With her debts cleared, Mom's life became much more comfortable. However, knowing that she hadn't reached out for help even when her electricity and gas were cut off, I decided I couldn't leave her to live alone anymore. I pushed forward with plans for her to move in with us. After persistent persuasion, Mom finally agreed. As for Alexander, I debated whether to divorce him, but ultimately chose not to. Though he had done something truly unforgivable by taking money meant for Mom's support, he had been a good husband up until then. He had worked hard in raising our son and had always supported the idea of Mom living with us. I believe he had genuinely succumbed to temptation this time. After giving up on the shop, Alexander returned to his part-time job at the cafe. It must have taken courage to go back to a workplace he had left while declaring he would open his own shop, but it showed how much he valued his previous job and the work at the cafe. Meanwhile, I continued focusing on my career as always. Being able to dedicate myself to my work was thanks to his support. Though this ordeal was a significant bump in the road, I believe we can continue building a good life together moving forward.